wasn't here Tuesday.
Oh, yeah, we didn't, and I forgot to record. Sorry. Yeah, we're only on page 3. Hey.
Is your husband back at home? Like, I know, like, just ran about last year, you said that your husband couldn't be at home because he was like out of state. Is he back now?
Yeah, he does. He still works in Illinois, but yeah, he comes home on the weekend. But for quarantine, he didn't come home until almost Easter. So from March 13th till Easter,
Which was
the end of April. Yeah, he had to quarantine. Yeah. So.
Hey, that's right.
Oh my god.
We do have an SAQ. Yeah, we're going to do it at the end of the hour, though, because I already started recording for Molly. And last time, I always record my APUSH because at the time I had 2 virtual students, and I just, out of habit, started recording at the very beginning of the class, and then they heard the whole dissection of the SAQ, and both of them were like, Mrs. Norris, in the lecture you just like gave us because it's Finn and Damon, that's why. Yes, because are you Blood, Sweat, and Tears? No, in the back, your shirt. No, okay. There was a band called Blood, Sweat, and Tears. Okay. Okay, we didn't get very far. And Wednesday, I did not give you a lecture, so we are only on page 3. And again, this is a really weird set of double chapters in that we have a lot of real like science, and we're going to talk about trade wars, and then we're going to have a lot about society, like how society changes. And we'll refer to that society as the society before the French Revolution versus the society after the French Revolution. So that's where we get that old regime. The old regime is going to be everything prior to the French Revolution, and then after will be a different way that we look at society. So on page 3, I think we ended up with my funny story about Jethro Tull. Jethro Tull gives us the seed drill, which now gives the ability to plant like what we think planting looks like. And I hope I was able to make you understand that before what that looked like. Just sowing seeds was not necessarily the best for farming. And with the seed drill, and again, that's exactly what it is. It's just a little drill that drills a hole and drops the seed in. You can also imagine how labor intensive that is, dropping each individual seed into the ground, but at least now we have better control of the crops and where they are and getting them in the ground. Our last guy that they like to ask about, which is why his name is in bold and underlined, is Robert Bakewell. And he pioneers selective breeding of livestock. So essentially what you need to know, especially about Robert Bakewell, the types of questions they ask about Robert Bakewell are not necessarily questions about his selective breeding, but it's that he used methods from the scientific revolution, like the scientific method, to develop these breeds. So he didn't just haphazardly say, oh, there's a big cow, there's another big cow, let me breed them together and make another big cow. He actually used scientific reasoning to develop what he wanted to create a larger and healthier animal. And also, please don't just think about this as I discussed yesterday or Tuesday, that it was just a lot of meat. It's all the other thing that comes from those larger cows and sheep: wool, leather, soap, candle, tallow, all those things. And then bigger cows make more manure. So essentially you've got more manure as well. And that, again, becomes an essential part of understanding the connection between the scientific revolution and this agricultural revolution. We really honestly don't have two things in European history that go together more adequately, like peanut butter and jelly, than the scientific revolution and the agricultural revolution. They really are, one leads into the other. And you really couldn't have the agricultural revolution without that scientific revolution. Even though the scientific revolution really only was about astronomy and physics and that kind of thing, it has a huge impact on the way people think about using information. The bottom of page 3, we're going to revisit the Columbian Exchange, and that again is about diet. And diet is really important in the lives of these poor people. One of the reasons that the life expectancy for people are so low is because it includes poor people. And part of the reason their life expectancy is so low is improper nutrition. If you don't have proper nutrition, your immune system isn't able to fight stuff off. You're more susceptible to diseases, and not getting enough nutrients also leads to malnourishment and all those other crazy things. So the thing that you need to know that comes from the Columbian Exchange that is increasingly and incredibly important will be the potato. Or as my favorite movie, potato, boil it, mash it, put it in a stew. If you don't know what that is, you are missing out on some awesome movies. Yes. What movie is it from, Ben? Anybody want to enlighten Ben? Boil it, mash it, put it in a stew. Lord of the Rings. Yeah. No. Lord of the Rings. The trilogy. Lord of the Rings.
I thought I heard that.
You've not ever seen any of those?
No, I've seen it.
Oh. Yes.
City, one of her friends and I, we all watched 3 of them in one city.
Like 9
I
hours.
had no idea what was happening, so we don't remember the movies.
Oh. Well, then watch them again. I've probably.
We
I've
owned the first and the third, but not the second.
Well, the third one is my favorite.
Your calendar says October 6th.
What? Oh, it's November 6th. Yes, not October. Thank you. I try to keep that up. Flip it to November. Thank you. Okay. Thank you.
Sorry.
Those are my favorite movies. I can't even tell you how many times I've watched all 3 of them. Almost as much as I've watched all of the Harry Potter movies that many times. Like,
Aren't all the Lord of the Rings movies like 3+ hours long?
each one of them's like 3+ hours, which is why I can, yeah. But they're awesome movies. All right. So here's what we're looking at the bottom of page 3. Potatoes and corn. Most always you're asked about potatoes. In reference to, we're getting ready in about 100 years to have a horrific potato famine in Ireland. Yes?
Molly isn't here, so I get to make fun of her. She got the potato.
She's
famine.
listening.
Oh no! Never mind.
She just heard that was Maddie.
Okay, never mind.
Okay.
I'm not gonna say that.
Okay. You can say it when we turn it off. Okay. There you go, Molly. The potato famine in Ireland will happen in the 1840s, 1850s, which will result in a gigantic, humongous immigration flow from Ireland because the people will be starving to death because of the potato famine. But potatoes are a really powerful, highly nutritious, easy to grow. Potatoes can be made in a variety of ways. Obviously, the easiest way for peasants is to throw it in the coals overnight, take it to work. Also can be used as a heater while you're working. You put in your pants, it heats you up, and then you eat it. We aren't asked, I know, yeah. I meant your pants pocket, not your pants, people. Not your pants.
No, Matt.
They don't have tinfoil, but
Just go boiling hot potato.
yeah, in your pants, in your coat pocket.
Matt. I can feel like that's how they got the game hot potatoes. They would just take it out.
All right.
And just see how quickly they.
Let's look at page 4. This movement called the enclosure movement, again, is one of the, if we're looking at how did the agricultural revolution impact Europe, we got to have some positive ones. So that's all the positive ones: nutritional food, healthier, bigger livestock. If there's a negative one, it's the enclosure movement. The enclosure movement you should always equate with bad stuff happens to poor people. What enclosure movement means is that we are enclosing that common farm ground. So Tuesday, we had this big open ground that everybody was able to use. We all put our animals out there. All of us had a little plot. As the landowner or the lord of the manor, I am now going to move away from agriculture because agriculture is always dicey. Am I going to have a crop? Am I not going to have a crop? And I'm going to move to raising sheep. So I need to keep my sheep enclosed. So now I'm going to take that land that you used as poor people to grow stuff for your family and maybe a little extra income, and I'm making it off limits to you. I'm putting up a fence and I'm putting my sheep in that pasture. So that's nothing that you can help, nothing to help you provide for your family. And it also removes access to growing your own food for me to put sheep. So my goal, as it says in 1A, is to increase my profits from wool. As we are moving, because in this back part of this chapter, we have our first industrial revolution, in which now, instead of ladies spinning and making cloth on their own, we're now going to take that into factories and we're going to make cloth. And England is going to be the cloth maker for the world. So lots of sheep, guaranteed profits. I don't have to worry if it's going to rain or if there's going to be drought. Sheep, profits. Yes.
Okay, so like if you like stole the opening for the sheep, then why didn't they just like move somewhere else?
That's what's getting ready to happen. So why didn't they move? So that's what's getting ready to happen. They're getting ready to move someplace else. Did everybody understand why did they just? The biggest problem in moving someplace else is for them is lack of money. And then two, when they get to these places, because they're going to go to London, what's there for them? There's not a lot of job openings for people who know how to plant seeds, or so that's going to be the problem. But that's where we're going. All of these people will be what's called relocated. They don't have any place, and that relocation moves them into big, large cities. So you're like 2 steps ahead of us with that. So enclosure of fields intensified in the 18th century. So in the 1700s, this begins to go even quicker. And the reason being is because we now have factories that will make cloth. And so if there's factories that can make cloth, I can have more sheep. More sheep gives me more money. Okay? Yes?
I'm sorry. What did you say? Like, look, you said something and everyone went like this and started writing.
I don't know.
So she said like the enclosure feels like
Okay. So what is happening is the end to the open field system. Landowners are going to consolidate. Consolidate means bring together. Their scattered holdings into compact fields that were fenced off, and those common lands are now not open. And this is going to result in the commercialization of agriculture, which again takes away poor people from working. Landowners are going to prosper and invest in technology, not people, machines, breeding. It's going to increase the number of large and mid-sized farms. And then most importantly, look at A, that one that starts with Parliament, that B in that fourth bullet point. Parliament passes over 3,000 enclosure acts that benefited large landowners. Guess what Parliament is made up of? People with large amounts of land. So Parliament now begins to make rules, not that they didn't before, but that will benefit them at the expense of poor people. And this will begin some of the first real class conflicts, classes meaning between different economic groups. Because the poor people are now starting to realize without representation in Parliament, nothing is ever going to change for them. And I'm going to say that 1,000,000 times to you people. When we, in this class, not as much, but next year in APUSH, 1,000,000 times to you people. If you don't have representation, nothing ever changes for you. How do you get representation? You vote. No, you vote. What, Maddie?
Who said when they have nothing else to eat, they will eat the rich? Who said that?
Who said what?
Who said when they have nothing else to eat, they will eat the rich? Who said that?
It's either Trotsky or Stalin. I can't.
It's
Yeah, Trotsky or Stalin. That's a very communist kind of thing. Yes. So, what we're beginning's the start of, very, very slowly, in England will be people beginning to understand the power of being able to vote, right? Parliament is made up of landowners. They pass 3,000 laws to make things better for them. And then in 1815, these corn laws, we're going to talk about them a lot. Okay, they're going to be in like the next 3 chapters. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time. This will be really the last thing that we look at, and we'll start our SAQ. But you need to make sure that you understand corn laws. So first and foremost, easy, it is about corn. It is about the grain of corn, just like us. We don't grow the ears of corn, right? That was so funny when we moved here with my husband. Not when we moved here with but when we all moved here. And his Southern California upbringing, he was so thrilled to see us surrounded because we moved here in late August. And he's like, look at all this corn. We can go out there and steal a couple of ears to eat. And I'm like, first, we don't steal from farmers. He's like, oh, you know what I mean. And I'm like, second, that is not corn to eat. He's like, what do you mean? No, that's not corn that you eat. It's feed corn, or it's corn to be processed into cornmeal. He's like, you can still eat it. I'm like, no, it's not the same. And he didn't believe me. Then when the corn starts, like it's drying and it's not being picked, he's like, what the heck? When they picking that corn? Like when it's all the way dry. How you going to eat that? You don't eat that corn. So this is the kind of corn we're talking about. He gets it now. And again, the corn laws are going to benefit landowners. So this is where we got to talk about a lot of big, complicated words, and we got to make sure we understand all of them. These will be part of your terms quiz in a few weeks. The first one is the word tariff. And that word has renewed since the United States has began putting tariffs on things. But very simply, a tariff is a tax. A tariff is a tax that a country puts on goods coming in. And people that don't understand tariffs tend to think that they are positive. Because, yeah, let's tax all the stuff coming in. So the way a tariff works, and we're going to make this France. So France brings corn into England. As the French ship sits at we're going to make it come to Liverpool. To Liverpool, before they can unload their corn, they have to pay the tariff or a duty to the counting house. And I'm going to make it easy just so. I'm going to make it 50%, which is a really high tariff. But it's easy for me to do those numbers. So before France can unload their corn, if they have $100 worth of corn, they have to pay $50 to take the corn off of the boat to be able to sell it. So now France, in order to make a profit on that corn, has to do what to the price of corn? Raise it 50%. So now that corn is $150 a bushel. That's why I'm making these round. So if I am a farmer that needs feed corn and I go to the feed corn store, I see French corn for $150, and then I see English corn for $100. That's the intent of a tariff. And if that is what it did and stopped there, then it would work. But it doesn't ever stop there, because as soon as England places a tariff on corn, France is going to place a tariff on something that England exports to France. So England exports a lot of wool. So France is going to say, we're going to put a 50% tariff on all your wool. And so while corn farmers are protected, sheep ranchers are now not going to be able to sell any wool in France. That's why it doesn't work, because countries retaliate. It even works less in these corn laws, because if you look at the second bullet, it drives up the price of English grain. How does that happen? We'll go back to our $150 bushel of corn from France. England was selling their corn for $100 a bushel. That French corn is $150. I'm raising mine to $140 because they'll still buy mine, and now I've got a 40% profit. Yeah, it's smart if you're selling the corn. It sure as heck isn't smart if you're buying the corn, right? So who gets taken to the cleaners again? The poor farmer that needs the feed to feed his corn. It takes people a long time to figure that out, poor people. As soon as they figure it out, these corn laws are going to explode, and we're actually going to have violent protests about these corn laws. What is it? Okay. So corn laws hurt the poor as they cannot afford the prices for food. So we're just talking about corn, but this corn law, once the Parliament realizes how much money they can make, they start putting tariffs on everything. And then France starts putting tariffs on everything. Tariffs historically, economically, never, and add like 30 million other nevers, never, ever work. They usually help one sector of the economy, but hurt other sectors. Always. Because countries will retaliate. You put a tariff on wool, on corn, we'll put a tariff on wool. We'll put a tariff on champagne. We'll put a tariff on ale. And they just go back and forth. And as Kaylee realized the people doing all the selling are getting rich. The people doing all the buying are losing their power to purchase. And that's always bad, especially when it's things like food. If they just did it to things that rich people wanted, then it would be okay. But when they start doing it to commodities like food, that's when it's bad. It is, the last bullet point is under corn laws. That's the one you need to put a big arrow. One of the most notorious examples of laws that benefit the wealthy at the expense of the English peasantry. That is why representation is so critical. If you don't have representation, nothing's going to change for you. Nothing. And right now, England is the most democratic nation in Europe, and less than about 5% of the people can vote. 5%. And so that's why nothing will change for poor people. This will be, for England, these corn laws will be one of the first laws or acts that will cause violence in their streets, like bad violence. So the last thing on page 4, enclosures' impact on the peasantry. As Kaylee said, why don't you just go somewhere else? It's hard to go somewhere else when you're poor. It's hard to go somewhere else when you're poor in the 1700s, just like it is in the 21st century. I know when we lived in Mississippi, and I hope that maybe those of you that watch the news and you look at things, when there's hurricanes down in that region, all the way from Brownsville along the Gulf Coast, all the way to the tip of Florida, and they tell you to evacuate. It's really easy to evacuate when you have a car and gas and you can pay for a hotel and food. If you're poor, you can't evacuate. Yes.
My friend Hunter moved to Louisiana, and he got a job at Waffle House right before all the hurricanes, which is the
Yes, you
worst
told us
job.
this. Yes.
God, I feel so bad for him. That is such a terrible job to get right before a bunch of hurricanes. They will not close.
No, they won't close. No. But
You can't leave.
But what I'm saying is, if you're a poor person, you can't evacuate. You don't have the money to evacuate. Even if you have a car, the gas, because you have to go pretty far. I mean, in Mississippi, you need to get to Jackson to be safe. Jackson's the middle of the state. Then when you get there, you have to have a hotel room. You have to eat 3 meals out. If you've got pets, you got to find a hotel that takes pets. Evacuating is difficult, just like moving. I don't know if any of you have ever moved a lot in your life, but moving is expensive. It's very expensive. And if you're poor, it's even more difficult to come up. But what happens is they go to towns. They move to places like London, Manchester, Liverpool, and we'll talk about that in a couple pages, because these people are going to move by the hundreds of thousands and really start to clog up those cities once they get there. Many became impoverished farm laborers. In some cases, enclosures freed men to pursue other economic opportunities, and we'll talk about that one. But for women, this really is a difficult part because there is no extra way for them to earn money. There's a common phrase that is used to denote female economy or the female economic sector, and it's called bread and butter. Not milk and butter, I'm sorry, because that would be the things that women could do to sell, to earn money for their families. And that would be eggs, collecting eggs from your chickens, churning milk into butter, anything that you could do off of the any kind of extra income that you could get off of your animals or small bits of land. And women really will have a difficult time as this enclosure movement. So you should always think, when you're asked anything about the enclosure movement, hear that word at all, that this will be positive for wealthy landowners, negative for everybody else. And then those corn laws are going to be a part of that as well. And that those corn laws will actually begin to incite violence as we move further in this chapter. All right. So Molly, we're getting ready to start our SAQ. You will write yours on Monday. I hope you get good news about your hip. And
Bye, Molly.
everybody say bye to Molly.
Bye, Molly.
And don't put me on your big. Oh, no, I don't have my face on this one, so you can't put this on your big TV. Okay. Bye.